For 10 years, Timothy believed in his seemingly perfect marriage. I mean, why wouldn't he? He had 2 great kids and a loving wife. Unfortunately though, she recently blindsided him with a divorce, leaving him both confused and devastated. Timothy loved his wife, so he tried to save their marriage. That's when it came to light that she'd enjoyed multiple affairs over the past 3 years. While you'd think that he'd want to leave this woman behind as quickly as possible, Timothy isn't quite ready to throw in the towel just yet. And as always, links to the original story can be found on coffeeandpopcorn.co.uk. But let's get into it. Timothy and his wife Tori are both in their 30s and were married for 10 years. They also have 2 elementary-aged kids. Timothy described the first 7 years of their marriage as being perfect, at least from his point of view. He couldn't have asked for a better wife and mother. That said, the last 3 years of their relationship were much tougher. So much so that they did a bunch of counseling to get their marriage back on track. Sadly though, they could never really get there. To get back what he was losing with Tori, Timothy planned countless dates, read, and listened to every and anything that talked about how to improve a marriage. And while it helped, there was a gap between them that he couldn't seem to close, no matter how hard he tried.
Gosh, just listening to how much energy he was pouring into his relationship is tiring me out.
You're telling me? During the second half of 2023, Tori blindsided Timothy and asked for a divorce. And no matter how much Timothy tried to talk her out of it, nothing would change her mind. And she insisted on going ahead with it. Like most of us would be, Timothy was confused. And yeah, the last 3 years were pretty tough. But Timothy was fully invested in their marriage. At the time, Tori didn't give Timothy a satisfactory answer as to why she was calling it quits. And even though he knew that he wasn't the perfect husband and had his faults, like we all do, he was still pretty shocked by her filing.
I don't know. Maybe he really undersold just how tough those last 3 years were. It's not like their relationship was in a good place, so he shouldn't have been so shocked by this move, right?
That's true, you have a point. Those 3 years could have been absolute hell. But there was a reason as to why things were so turbulent between them. You see, a little more than a month after Tori filed, she was already seeing a new guy. And a month after that, she'd introduced this guy to their kids.
There's no way that she just met that guy. Not after 10 years of marriage. Who moves on that quickly?
Well, you wouldn't be wrong, as during the discovery phase of their divorce, certain documents revealed that Tori enjoyed multiple affairs, all starting from around the 7th year of their marriage.
Which is why she was so distant with him.
Exactly. One of her affairs lasted for at least a year, something that Timothy had no idea she was capable of. The amount of lying she did to keep all this hidden from Timothy was incredible. But now, Timothy knew why he wasn't able to connect with Tori during the last 3 years of their marriage. Fast forward 5 months and nearly $100,000 in lawyer bills. Tori suddenly decides, no, I don't want a divorce. I want to work on our marriage. Which confused Timothy because she was still seeing her new guy. Tori told Timothy that she'd end her new relationship if he took her back. But Timothy, well, he wanted to know why she had a change of heart. While they were going through the divorce, Timothy met someone new, which netizens were super happy about. So he wondered if that's why she wanted him back. Or maybe it was his high income that caused her to change her mind about things. Tori said it was because he was a great dad. But that's nonsense, because that's something she would have noticed a long time ago. At least in my opinion.
Whatever you have to say next, please don't let it be that he dumped the new girl to get back with Tori.
Not today, but he was tempted to let her new guy know all about how little Tori thinks of him, since she was ready to call it quits on their new relationship. Being the kind of guy he is, though, Timothy decided to hear Tori out, thinking that it was the least he could do after 10 years of marriage.
The least she could have done is not fuck other guys. Sorry for my language, but he's being too nice.
No, I hear you. Anyway, during their talk, Tori took responsibility for her mistakes and gave Timothy a heartfelt apology. But still, she couldn't help but put some of the blame on him for her cheating. something that Timothy rejected immediately. Their divorce was finalized a few weeks before he shared his story, and since then, she tried to get back with him. Even though Timothy doesn't like seeing Tori in such a regretful state, far too much damage was done to their relationship. And besides, he has a new woman in his life who's beautiful inside and out, and she supported him through this whole thing.
Well, I for one am glad that he's free.
Yeah, a lot of netizens felt the same way. But things haven't been easy for Timothy since the divorce.
Why? What happened?
Well, in an update he shared, he'd lost access to his kids 60% of the time. He also lost the house, half his money, and the dogs. This is why there's so much talk about people getting prenups. I mean, we all have prenups. The only difference is, will you declare your own conditions or abide by what the government already has in place? Anyway, Timothy was pretty annoyed that the guy Tori left him for didn't have to deal with any consequences. And even though he knows that most of the blame should be on Tori, it still rubs him the wrong way. Now, you should know, Tori and the new guy aren't together anymore, so I guess things went south pretty quickly after the divorce was finalized. But yeah, that's just about where we are with things. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. Clara's 42, and for the longest time, when it came to her mother, she tried to keep a hands-off approach. She did this a lot during her 30s, and luckily for her, for the most part, it worked. Still, as Clara started to learn more about her issues with codependency and tried to heal from the trauma her mom caused, she became a lot more confrontational. Clara used to be a patient woman, but that all changed when she refused to back down. And truth be told, she got a lot of pleasure from seeing her mother fly off the handle in a narcissistic rage. Because now Clara could beat her at her own game. For Clara, this was fun for a while, but soon enough, it started to impact her mental health, and she didn't win every confrontation she'd have with her mom. Clara's mother, Bethany, really knew how to push her buttons. And ultimately, the thing that pushed her over the edge was an old tea kettle.
Gosh, I'm already on the edge of my seat. Me and my family have fallen out over some silly things, but a kettle… damn.
Yeah, well, this is how Clara's story began. You see, she moved back to her hometown after her grandmother's health started to go downhill. So like a good granddaughter, she wanted to take care of her. Clara's grandmother was a certified nursing home assistant, and Clara made a sworn promise to not let her grandma waste away in a place like that. Unfortunately though, Clara moving back to her hometown came with certain drawbacks. She lost her career, and she had to start from scratch in a place that was paying her much less. For Clara though, she was happy to pay the price if it meant she could take care of her grandma, which, you know, is really sweet. Clara moved in with her grandma as it'd make things much easier, but it wasn't an idea she was particularly keen on.
Why? I thought she'd like being closer.
Well, simply put, once Clara's grandmother passed away, Bethany, Clara's mom, would inherit her home. Anyway, after being able to enjoy 4 amazing years with her grandma, she finally passed away, and immediately, Bethany swooped in and started making up a bunch of new rules, as well as a bunch of things that Clara would need to do if she didn't want to get kicked out. You have to keep in mind that Clara looked after and paid for everything over those 4 years, never asking her mom for a penny because she knew if she asked Bethany for help, it'd be like doing a deal with the devil, as there'll be a price to pay later on. Clara wasn't having any of it though, so rather than pay her mom rent, she made plans to move out as soon as possible. Bethany wasn't happy about this though, and tried to do everything in her power to stop Clara from stepping out on her own. She tried to say that Clara owed her money, and even made it seem like she'd sign over the house to Clara at some point. She even let other family members know that if they helped Clara move, she'd never forgive them.
What is she? Some kind of mafia boss?
She's just super controlling, but that didn't stop Clara from getting out of there.
Good. So she got help in the end?
No. She moved everything by herself a month later. That's how determined she was. Despite how her mom was treating her, Clara tried even harder to maintain a relationship with Bethany, giving her one more chance to change her ways. But it didn't take more than 5 months for that idea to go out the window. After moving out, Clara's aunt Rachel created a group chat and invited Clara and Bethany to join. It was something they'd use to just keep up with each other. Every now and again, they'd ask Clara how the new home was doing. But her mom would always say condescending things about her new place, and Clara would respond with something like,
"I would have been more than happy to stay if you didn't try to do what you did."
"You're just ungrateful. You lived here for 4 years with your grandma, and for that whole time, I never charged you rent, even though you were working."
Wait, what? But she looked after her grandma. Isn't that enough?
You'd think so, but I didn't even tell you the part in which Clara's mother got married to a doctor and took every penny of the inheritance that Clara's grandfather had left for her. So, when it comes to money, let's just say that Bethany wasn't struggling. In any case, 5 months pass, and Bethany starts sending messages to the group chat about things Clara had taken from the house. This soon became about how Clara's never able to tell the truth about things, and how she'd never forgive Clara for what she did.
What did Clara do? Did I miss a part of this story?
No. But this is where the famous Kettle comes into play, as Clara and her mom get into an argument over the phone.
"Why did you give my old cast tea kettle to your dad?"
What the hell are you talking about?
"I know that you took it while you were living with Grandma. It was on the wooden stove, so I know that you took it."
There hasn't been a kettle on the stove for years. And to be honest, I didn't even know it was missing.
Clara didn't know how her mother figured out that her dad had that kettle, but she did know that the kettle never belonged to her mother and had been in her father's family for generations. This is something that Clara knew growing up. Bethany just took the kettle with her during the divorce because she wanted to hurt Clara's dad as much as possible. After arguing on the phone with her mom for a while, Clara decided that she'd had enough. But before she could hang up the phone, her mother said,
"You better get that tea kettle back or there'll be hell to pay."
Damn. She wanted that kettle more than Thanos wanted the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Anyway, to get this whole thing sorted out, Clara called her dad, who we'll just call Angelo from now on. Clara never thought her dad was perfect, but he was always very good with her, especially with all the crap her mother put her through. I mean, Bethany used Clara to emotionally blackmail her dad, intentionally sabotaging their relationship. Anyway, when Clara gives her dad a call, the first thing he says is,
"Hi, is this about the kettle?"
Ha ha ha. Bingo.
"Look, while your grandma was alive, she felt bad that your mom took the kettle from me during the divorce and left it with her. When you got back and I started to visit you guys, I noticed the kettle but never said anything. But your grandma, well, she brought it up one day. She told me to take it back, and she didn't even think your mom remembered taking it during our divorce."
Clara's grandmother was always very fond of Angelo, and during her final years, they reconnected. He'd even visit her when Clara wasn't around. And, that little detail actually warmed my heart. Being surrounded by people who loved her so much must have been amazing. Anyway, Bethany learned that Angelo got the kettle back from his ex-girlfriend, as he spoke about it in front of her with one of his friends, and it wasn't long before Bethany gave Angelo a call.
"You're a damn thief, you know that? That kettle belonged to my family. It was never yours."
"You're talking nonsense. Even if it didn't have my family's name on it, possession is 9/10 of the law. I don't care what you do, you're not getting it back. It belongs to my family. Besides, it was your mom who gave it back to me."
Despite Angelo telling Bethany the truth about what happened, for some reason, she was fixated on this whole thing being Clara's fault. So the drama was far from over.
All this over a damn kettle? This thing must be made of gold.
Funny you should say that because I've actually got a picture of it. But I'll show you later on in the story.
God, I'm on the edge.
Yeah. Anyway, back in the group chat, Bethany continued calling Clara a liar. But Clara, being the decent daughter she is, she'd never call out her mom in front of other people. But something about this whole tea kettle thing flipped a switch inside Clara. A switch she couldn't easily turn off. Before we get to the end of this story, we have to go back a little bit, just to when Clara first moved out of what used to be her grandmother's house. Remember how Bethany was saying that she'd give the house to Clara at some point? Well, just before the Kettle incident, Clara wanted to put this to the test. Bethany said that Clara could come back, but she'd only have access to one bedroom and the communal areas of the house. The reason for this is that Bethany and her husband had put their home on the market, so it was going to be sold. Clara wasn't convinced of this though, because, why would they move from a 3-story mansion to a 3-bedroom cabin? Anyway, until their home could be sold and they were able to buy a new place, they'd live with Clara, something that Clara had no interest in doing, which is why she moved out. Clara's no stranger to how her mom liked to tell lies. She lied so much that Clara would record her saying stuff so she could replay it later on, just to make sure she wasn't losing her mind, as Bethany was one hell of a gaslighter. Clara was fully convinced that her mom was lying about this whole house thing, so she brought in one of her friends to look into it. As far back as a year ago, which is when Bethany and her husband had put the house up for sale, there was nothing. And Clara's friend's a real estate agent, so if anyone was going to find this place, it'd be him. Now, let's come back to the more recent events in the story, in which everything goes up in smoke. As per usual, Bethany was trying to humiliate Clara in the group chat, and at this point, Clara was fed up, so she messaged her aunt privately. Naturally, Clara's aunt was worried about her, so she called Clara, and that's when Clara came clean about everything. After talking on the phone with her aunt, Clara posted the real estate listings in the group chat, showcasing the fact that her mom was lying about the whole thing. Bethany wasn't ready to call it quits though, and instead went on about how the listing was new so wouldn't show up yet.
But didn't she post it up a year ago?
Exactly. And Clara mentioned this, which sent her mom into a panic. After that, Bethany went on a total rampage, trying to do everything to tarnish Clara's name. Clara didn't care about what the people in her hometown thought of her though, and the people she really cared about already knew how much of a narcissistic monster her mother was. Still, Clara started getting bombarded with messages from people about how much of an awful daughter she was, and eventually, she'd had enough. She warned her mom that if she didn't put an end to this campaign she had going on, she'd do something about it herself. Bethany didn't care though. Why would she? She's a narcissist. But the message that made Clara see red came from a preacher who contacted her via Facebook, attempting to shame her into talking with her mom. Clara went scorched earth and created the group chat to end all group chats. She added all of her phone contacts, some of Bethany's current and ex-friends, her husband's family and kids, people from their community, and of course, the preacher who thought she was a horrible daughter. In the group chat, Clara exposed all of the horrible things her mother had said about these people. Remember how Clara said she'd record her mom? Well, she had all the receipts during this exposure. She had text messages, voicemails, and phone recordings. In fact, Clara was shocked by just how much she managed to save. At the end of it all, she shared the story about her mom's fake house listing, and her dad topped it all off by posting a picture of the Kettle with the caption saying, "Was this really worth it?"
Damn. That thing looks ancient, but I can see why it's irreplaceable.
Yeah, it does. After that, Clara and her dad quickly exited the chat, and needless to say, they ruffled a lot of feathers. People were upset about the things Bethany had said about them, and many of them apologized to Clara for getting it all wrong. Clara didn't care about that though. The only thing she cared about was finally being able to inflict damage on the woman who'd hurt her over and over again. By destroying her public persona, her ego took a massive hit, and all for the sake of a Kettle that didn't really belong to her. In Clara's eyes, the Kettle was just a conquest to her mom, a token of victory over her dad. Since that day, Clara hasn't spoken with her mom, and she's cut off a lot of people who were in the group chat. It's not that she hasn't forgiven them, she just doesn't miss them.
Wow, that's intense. So what? Did her mother just run away, never to be seen again?
Not exactly. Bethany's tried reaching out to Clara's dad, talking about how she misses her daughter, but Angelo let her know that Clara wanted nothing to do with her. Bethany says that Clara's been brainwashed by her dad and her support group. And I don't know if she actually believes that, or if it's just something she says. Bethany has no way to contact Clara directly though, and Clara would rather keep it that way.
Well, I'm just glad that she got what she deserved. Things don't always work out that way.
Yeah, tell me about it. In today's Reddit cheating story, we have Lenny, a guy who co-founded a fairly successful company with his ex-fiancée, Tiffany. Unfortunately though, Tiffany ended up cheating on Lenny with one of the guys they hired, someone she didn't even like in the beginning. Things aren't as clear-cut with this cheating story though, because Lenny doesn't actually have absolute proof of Tiffany hooking up with this guy, but maybe you can let us know what you think in the comments. As always, links to the original story can be found on coffeeandpopcorn.co.uk, but let's get into it. Lenny and his now ex, Tiffany, run a business together that they started during the whole COVID thing, and while they never expected it, it became more successful than they ever imagined it could be. They got engaged last summer, and were planning on getting married this year in December, which seems to be off the cards now, given everything that went down. When talking about Tiffany now, Lenny describes her as a functioning alcoholic, someone who's barely holding on.
My gosh, was she always that way, or is it more of a recent thing?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure, but from how he tells the story, it seemed to me like she was always a bit of a drinker. Anyway, a few months ago, their business grew so big that they had to hire a new and very senior employee, and they ended up bringing on a guy called Corey. At first, Tiffany was against hiring him, but Lenny couldn't stop singing his praises, and it helped that he came from a similar background. In the end, he was able to talk Tiffany into hiring him. The thing about Tiffany, though, is that she loves going out with a specific group of people who work for her and Lenny. And since most of them are quite young, Lenny thinks they're too intimidated by her to say no whenever she asks to enjoy a heavy night of drinking during the week. When she wasn't such a heavy drinker, Lenny would go out with them, but eventually he stopped and let her know why.
When you go out drinking in boss mode, you can be particularly awful, mean to service people at restaurants, and quite frankly, cruel to me.
In any case, the new guy, Corey, became a part of the drinking crew, and Lenny started to call them the sycophants.
A psycho what now?
A sycophant is basically a person who tries to get in the good books of someone who's wealthy or influential.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah, anyway. A few months ago, Tiffany was out later than normal, and as you'd expect, Lenny wasn't happy about it. And the next day, she told him that she needed some space for a couple of days to think about why she does the things she does, their future, and whatever else was on her mind. Lenny wasn't really a fan of what she was suggesting, but in the end, he agreed to go along with it. 2 days after they had that little chat, Tiffany had a bridesmaid's fitting, and everything seemed fine, and it looked like she was having a good time. Still, when it came to the whole her needing space thing, she kept moving the goalpost. A few days turned into a week, and that turned into a month, and that month, well, it became 2 months.
Honestly, things aren't looking too good for our boy Lenny. Sounds to me like she was trying to break up with the guy.
Possibly. I mean, before all this, they'd agreed to go to couples counseling, but Tiffany wasn't interested in doing that anymore. To make things worse, after spending 2 months apart, she postponed the wedding and took off her ring. And shortly after that, she decided they were done.
What? Like, permanently?
Well, she said it'd be a temporary thing, so they could work through their problems, and once they'd both done whatever it was they needed to do, they could get back together. During this break, though, Tiffany and Corey were getting very close. So close that other employees who worked for Lenny brought it up to him.
No. Something was definitely going on there. Her wanting a break from the relationship in those 2 months they had apart, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, I mean, Lenny even brought this up to Tiffany, but she insisted that nothing was going on between them. But that brings us to 3 weeks ago, when Lenny had to travel for work, and while he was away, he got an email from one of his neighbors saying,
Can you please have this car moved that's partially blocking our driveway? It's been here for 2 days.
The neighbor even attached an image of the car to the email, and predictably, it was Corey's.
No surprise there. How did she talk her way out of that one?
Well, what she said was that it was only overnight, and that the whole sycophant crew stayed over after a night of heavy drinking. Lenny did say that he had proof of the fact that 4 people stayed over, and that on the night in question, Corey slept on the sofa with someone else. What's weird is that earlier in the day, everyone was at the office, but Tiffany and Corey were working from home, which is probably why his car was at the house for so long. While Lenny was away, he and Tiffany spoke, and from his perspective, things were sort of okay. He was even feeling positive about them being able to figure things out. Corey had a wedding to attend in Australia, so he'd be gone for like 10 days. But since it wasn't looking like Tiffany wanted Lenny to come home anytime soon, he decided to spend a month or so in their Mexico office so he could solve a problem they were having.
Wait. I know this isn't a part of the story, but what business did they actually start during COVID?
Beats me, but it sounds like things were going really well for them. Anyway, the week Lenny was all set to leave for Mexico, Tiffany decided it was okay for Lenny to come home.
And let me guess, it was when Corey was in Australia.
Hang on. Let me get to it. So anyway, when Lenny went home, he had to sleep in the spare room, but according to him, things were sort of normal. I mean, they'd eat dinner together, watch TV, normal couple stuff. But every night he was there, Tiffany would get drunk. Sometimes she'd drink at home, and others she'd go out. On one of those nights, she was out with another woman, but it wasn't someone Lenny identified as a sycophant, so he didn't really think much of it, he just let it be. But at around midnight, Lenny was in the kitchen and heard the electric lock of their front door go off, but he didn't see anyone come into the house, so he took a look outside, which is when he saw Tiffany leaning against the wall, FaceTiming someone. He asked her who it was, but without even saying goodbye to the person, she quickly pulled out her AirPods and said, "No one."
Is that how that conversation ended?
No, he tried to get her to go inside, but she was being stubborn, probably because she was absolutely wasted. But eventually, she goes in, and they continue to have a talk.
I'm going to ask you again. Who were you talking to just now?
It's just a mutual friend of ours.
Bullshit.
She goes on to say that she was talking to one of their clients, but when Lenny asked to see the call log, she refused, so he asked again, and this time, she unlocked her phone and scrolled down the call log, as if he didn't know what the top of a call log looked like, so she was obviously trying to hide something from him. Eventually, she does come clean about who she was talking to, and it was Corey. She was still insisting they were just friends, but Lenny wasn't ready to let it go just yet.
Why don't you just come clean? Tell me everything so we can do this in an unmessy way.
No, I've not done anything wrong. I'm not even having an emotional affair.
Okay, then you shouldn't have a problem showing me your text thread with him.
Instead of showing him the thread though, Tiffany quickly deleted her iMessage history with Corey, and Lenny watched her do it right in front of him. And even though he saw her, she lied about doing it, saying it was a mistake.
Just come clean already.
There's nothing to come clean about.
Then convince me that all of this stuff is just a massive coincidence.
I can't do that either.
If you don't come clean, I'm telling every single person we know about this, but only what I know. No speculation or slander.
And that's where we are with things. Unfortunately, there aren't any updates to this story, so we don't know what happened next. But the question is, did Tiffany ever sleep with Corey? Lenny doesn't seem to think he has evidence of Tiffany's cheating, but everything in his story indicates that Tiffany's up to something. She claimed to not even be having an emotional affair, but proceeds to hide her conversations. If that doesn't tell Lenny everything he needs to know, I don't know what will. Also, them being apart for 2 months when they were supposed to be getting married is a load of nonsense. And personally, I don't think that sort of thing is healthy for a relationship. When Gary stumbled across his wife's post on Reddit, he found out she was crushing on a coworker, and immediately, he fell to pieces. Not only was his wife crushing hard on this guy, she even shared nudes of herself on Reddit. Can you believe it? As always, links to the original story can be found on coffeeandpopcorn.co.uk. But let's get into it. Gary and his wife Charlotte are in their early 30s and have been married for 5 years, but have been together for a total of 8. However, they don't have any kids. Last summer, Gary found out that his wife made a post on Reddit, a post in which she was asking for advice regarding a guy from her workplace. Unfortunately for Gary, by the time he'd seen the post, it was already 2 years old, and since then, it's been deleted. Luckily though, Gary made a copy of what she wrote, so we get to see exactly what it was she said. The title of her post was, "Does he lust for me or not? Help." So Gracelyn, if you don't mind doing the honors.
Hi. I'm in need of some advice regarding a man I work with. We don't work at the same company. He just has an office next to ours and is in the Army. I'm 28, married and good looking, and he's 41, married and decent looking. I'm very friendly, so we started talking about random stuff like metal music, which we're both into. It's since evolved into us having flirty type discussions, and he's asked me lots about my life, such as my age, where I live, and what my husband does for work, and I figured that he just wanted to know more about me. The other day, I was in his office talking, and he casually gets up, grabs his lotion, and starts applying it to his leg, pulling his pants up and revealing the tattoos he had. Was he showing off? Or was he genuinely applying oil to his tattoos mid-conversation? He's married, but never talks about his married life, and he smiles at me when I come by to see him. He must be flattered that a 28-year-old is interested in him. We've talked for long periods of time, and his body language is always relaxed, like leaning against his door or in his chair. So, while there could be signs of this being a crush, how can I know for sure that he's interested in me? And how would I know how far he's willing to go? I'm happily married, but dig his attention. He's charming, decent looking, and I'm somewhat crushing on him too, but I don't think it'll go anywhere. Still, I can't tell you how I'd react if he kissed me. Would I back off and set boundaries, or pounce on him with raging hormones? Because as a woman, we love that sort of attention and want to be desired. Men, what do you think? How can I find out how he sees me without asking in a direct way?
Now, while the post is gone, the comments weren't deleted, and this is how his wife responded to someone.
I'm shy and I don't think I'll make a move, but I'm not sure if he'd try. I don't think so, unless he's really sure that I like him and not just flirting. Sometimes, it's only me and him on our floor, which is down in the basement of the building, so it's easy. I know that I'm playing with fire, but I don't know why I love the attention and flirty talks with him. Growing up, my dad never gave me attention. My exes left me when I was overweight, and my husband is great, but that gleam that he had in his eyes in the beginning has disappeared. He isn't enamored by me anymore, which happens in most marriages after the honeymoon phase. I'm good looking for my age and in shape now, so I have more confidence this time, and I like flaunting it with him.
Another one of her replies to a comment read,
"Chill, girl, I wasn't the one who stole your man, and like I mentioned in my post, it might not go anywhere, and I don't know what I'd do if he kissed me. Maybe I'd automatically feel guilty and ask him to stop. I don't know. I'm just wondering if by the signs I mentioned above, if he's interested. He's a Christian with kids and has morals, so who knows if he would even go that far, but I haven't dated in a while and wondering, what are the signs that a married man is interested in another woman? Geez, flirting is flirting, and we don't talk personal stuff. It's mostly music, our work, and food. Just general topics for now."
If all this wasn't enough, Gary also found progress pictures that his wife posted a few months prior to this. The first post was legit, but the second one was a nude that she'd previously sent to Gary while he was overseas. In the version she uploaded to Reddit though, her private parts were edited and covered by hearts. Which is something, I guess. When Gary looked through her inbox, it had a few horny dudes in it who messaged Charlotte, and rather than shut them down, she flirted with a couple of them. When Gary shared this story on Reddit, it was 10 months after he found everything out, and he still couldn't believe what had happened. To Gary, it felt like someone else wrote those posts, not his wife. On the day of discovery, Gary blew up at Charlotte and told her that he needed time to reflect on what happened. After questioning her, she insisted that nothing went on between her and this guy at work. She was fantasizing, but regretted it immediately after she posted it. The guy in question used to call her Kid, and had no romantic interest towards her. And she shared pictures on Reddit because she felt the need to be validated, and she hardly remembered posting them.
He could have called her Babadook for all I care. The point is, she was giving this guy the kind of attention she should have been giving to her husband.
Yeah, I won't argue with you there. Eventually, Gary told her to move out and said that they should live apart because that's what he needed. At least that's what he thought. While they stayed in contact the whole time, later on, Gary realized that it was a mistake, as Charlotte recently issued him with an ultimatum, saying that by the following month, Gary had to make a firm decision about their relationship. Given that this story was originally shared back in May of 2024, it's safe to say that by now, Gary's made his choice. Unfortunately for us though, we'll never know what it was since his post no longer exists.
I'm a bit shocked that she was the one to give the ultimatum.
Yeah, and netizens weren't on her side at all, with one person saying,
The ultimatum ended it. She's not getting her way, so she issues an ultimatum. Let her know she's welcome to go back to the street.
For me though, her giving an ultimatum isn't really an issue, but it is a little weird that it's being issued by the offender. Still, anyone at any time is free to leave a relationship that they don't feel is right for them. Just because she cheated, it doesn't mean she's obligated to stick around and wait for Gary to get over it. Anyway, Charlotte would go on to say that if Gary wants their marriage to work, they have to put in the effort, and living separately wasn't solving anything. What's funny to me is that she recommended that Gary read books on how to be a better partner, as well as articles about love languages.
If you ask me, those are books that she should be reading.
Well, yeah, Gary even said that the things she was recommending have nothing to do with what she did. On top of that, Charlotte was telling Gary about other guys who've hit on her, almost as if that was supposed to get his trust back. Before all this went down, they were actually trying to have a baby.
As long as Gary doesn't stick with her, I'd say he dodged a bullet there.
Well, you know, her biological clock's ticking, which is partly why Gary thinks she gave him an ultimatum. He doubts that she'll want to wait around for several years for him to get over what she did. Still, Gary wasn't ready to make his choice just yet. For Gary, Charlotte broke something that he's not sure can ever be fixed. However, that doesn't change the fact that he loves her and hopes for reconciliation. Ever since his discovery, Gary's had problems with alcohol, so you can only imagine how much trouble this whole thing caused him. Thankfully though, when he shared this story with the world, he'd been sober for 2 weeks, so I can only hope that things stayed that way. For 13 years, Jacob thought he had it all, a loving wife and 2 wonderful kids. But everything changed when his wife became a fitness instructor. After making a career change, his wife became distant. Then, confessed to messaging a guy from her gym, and what seemed innocent to begin with soon escalated into a devastating revelation. The trust was gone, and their family started to fall apart, leaving Jacob to pick up the pieces. Can he save his family, or is it too late? As always, links to the original story can be found on coffeeandpopcorn.co.uk. But let's get into it. Jacob and his wife Amy have known each other for 13 years, and they met when Amy was working at a bar. They got to talking, and before he left, Jacob gave her his number, and 3 days after that, they had their first date. From that day forward, Jacob and Amy were inseparable. I mean, they were together like all the time. They were super compatible and comfortable with each other, so it really didn't take them long to move in together. Their morals and core values were perfectly aligned, and neither of them ever wanted to get a divorce, especially if they had kids. Amy came from a broken home and hates her dad for cheating on her mom and treating his kids, which are her and her brother, very poorly. When Amy got pregnant with their first child, she was homesick, so Jacob quit his job and they moved back to where she grew up. This place was 1,000 miles away. It was a place Jacob had never been to before, and he struggled to find work there. After their son was born, Jacob found himself working in retail because they needed the money.
I have no idea how much he was making, but it was probably hard to support a family on an income from a retail job.
Yeah, things started to look up for Jacob though when he got accepted into med school, but it did mean they'd have to move again. They moved to another state, and while Jacob was studying his ass off, Amy was out making new friends and having a good time. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows though, because during that year, Amy had a cancer scare and miscarriage, which led to Jacob putting his studies on hold so he could fully be there for his family. Eventually, Jacob went back to his studies, but soon enough, Amy was pregnant again, and they ended up having a baby boy. Their baby was born on the day of Jacob's final exam though, so he had to miss the test so he could be with his family.
Damn, Jacob's really not having much luck with his studies, is he?
No, you're right. But in the new year, he was able to finish the year, but he had to spend a lot of time away from his family to get it done, which was pretty tough on him. During that time, Amy said that Jacob was neglecting her and the kids, but Jacob says that he always asked if she needed help with anything. They never actually spoke about this with each other while Jacob was studying, but she did complain about it a lot to her friends, which personally, I don't agree with. I understand that sometimes people need to vent, but if you have an issue with your partner, you should talk to them about it. After all, that's the person you've chosen to build a life with.
Sounds like you're about to go off on another one of your rants.
No, it's just irritating to me. Anyway, Jacob ended up getting myocarditis after taking the COVID vaccine, and it really messed him up pretty bad. And as you might have guessed, he ended up missing out on most of his studies for that year. When he was well enough though, Jacob buried his head in the books again. But
what the hell is going on with this guy? There's always something.
Yeah, he ended up getting a spinal injury that required surgery and nearly 2 years of rehab. And even after that, Jacob was never the same. Even today, he has chronic and unrelenting pain, but he's managing. Since he was pretty much out of commission, Amy decided to become a fitness instructor. She studied, became a personal trainer, got fit, and even got into bodybuilding. Jacob's always been the kind of guy to encourage Amy to follow her dreams, letting her know that she can do anything she puts her mind to, something that the other men in her life failed to do. With all that encouragement though, Amy found herself away from home more and more, and because she was always busy, Jacob became the primary carer for their kids. Amy would leave the house before they woke up in the morning and wouldn't be home until after dinner. Over Christmas, she was very distant with Jacob and the kids, and even though they were on holiday, Amy couldn't stop stressing about work, which led to them having a serious talk at the start of January.
I've been feeling disconnected from you lately. We need to spend more time together. And I have to be honest with you. I've been texting a guy called Andrew from the gym for a couple of weeks and feel bad about it. It wasn't anything sexual and nothing has gone on between us.
Well, that's not what I was expecting to hear. Don't you think this is a warning for us? Maybe we should do counseling.
I agree.
He took his wife's confession as if it was nothing. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah, he did. And after that conversation, Amy cuddled up to him and they went to sleep. The next day, though, Jacob asked her more questions, and she admitted that things were sexual with Andrew, but nothing physical had gone on. While they were talking, she said that she'd cut all ties with him, but after chatting with a friend at work, she went back on her word.
That's not a friend. That's an enemy of her relationship.
Yeah, which is why people should stop getting others so involved in their relationships. Anyway, it turned out that this whole thing with Andrew had been going on for 2 months, and Amy suddenly decided that her relationship with Jacob was over because she didn't want to work on it anymore. The day after they broke up, and while she was supposed to be looking after the kids, Amy went to sleep with Andrew instead.
Cheating is one thing, but putting your kids at risk just so you can get off is actually disgusting.
Yeah, we don't know if they were left home alone or for how long. And for the record, Andrew's in his early 20s, Amy's in her mid-30s, and Jacob's 42. That's just something Jacob wanted us to know midway through his story. In any case, Andrew ended up dumping Amy a week or two after they got together, and that's when she decided that her and Jacob should do counseling.
If you dare tell me that he took her back, I'm walking out of here.
I guess you should pack up then, because they started doing counseling, but they agreed to a trial separation. They didn't tell the kids about it, and Amy slept in the spare room, and while they were going through this trial, they agreed to not date or bring anyone else into this drama pot.
And how long was this trial supposed to be?
It was supposed to be for 6 months, and during that time, they'd do couples and individual counseling. They also started reading self-help books, and they talked about the things they thought applied to their relationship. And while things were getting better for them, Amy started acting weird again after she got close to someone at her gym. Apparently, she was talking with one of her clients, presumably about her marriage, and out of nowhere, a guy approached her.
You know, I've been through a divorce before. If you need some advice, I can help you. It's not an easy thing to deal with.
Oh, okay, yeah, that'd be nice. It's been rough.
I hear you. Believe me. Give me your number so we can talk later.
Sure, here you go.
Is that really how that conversation went down?
No, well, I don't know. I just imagine it was something like that. But it doesn't matter, because in the end, this guy, Brian, walked away with Amy's phone number. This whole thing blew up over Easter, because once again, Amy was hiding things from Jacob, breaking the little bit of trust he had left in her. Before Jacob was able to find out about Brian, Amy had already left the kids at home so she could spend 2 hours with him.
She ditched her kids again?
Yeah, apparently she was going out to clear her head, which doesn't make any sense to me, because even if that was what she really wanted to do, she should have made sure someone was around to watch the kids. Jacob's and Amy's relationship was worse than it's ever been at this point, and he couldn't trust a single thing she said. And when it came to their kids, she was totally unreliable, which is sad because they used to be her #1 priority. Jacob was looking after the kids 80 to 85% of the time because Amy was never home, and even when she was there, she didn't put in any effort. One time, she even gave the youngest one ice cream for dinner, probably because she couldn't be bothered to prepare a proper meal for them. Jacob's life is a mess, and even right now, as we're making this video, he and Amy are still going through it.
Wait, he's not still with her, is he?
No, she's with Brian, but they're constantly fighting about who should have custody of the kids. And from how things are looking, it's the sort of thing that could go on for years. For the life of me though, I don't know why Jacob tried to work things out with Amy after she cheated on him the first time and chose to be with the other guy. The only reason he even got a second chance with her is because Andrew broke it off. So the truth is, she had no intention of going back to him. She just didn't have any other choice at the time. This story makes it painfully clear that if you're not your partner's priority or the person they really want to be with, it's only a matter of time before they replace you, which is exactly what happened to Jacob. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed today's video on coffee and popcorn, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.